Hey, it's Sammy for another episode of the IdOMUSIC podcast, and our goal and our mission is to empower and educate musicians and artists worldwide. And on today's episode, we sat down with Vice President of Programming and Operations at Radio 1, Hurricane Dave, discussing his 40 years in radio, how he adjusts to the times and technology, and relying on his faith in the face of adversity. Hey, it's Sammy for another episode of the IdOMUSIC podcast, and today's guest is actually someone pretty close to the company I work at. He's my boss man, the VP, the Vice President of Programming and Operations at Radio 1, entrepreneur, the list goes on, investor. You got your hands in a lot of things. Hurricane Dave, how you doing?
What's happening? Good to see you, Sammy. I've been trying to get you on board for a long time. So it sounds kind of weird to say my boss. Because I've been talking to you since you were in D.C.
Right. Yeah. We go back to me finding you on LinkedIn in like 2014.
Right.
Trying to secure the bag.
Yeah. And now we're here, and I'm on your show.
Right. This
That's
is crazy.
I'm excited about that.
Yeah, I want to talk to you about a lot of things. I know you asked me off the record, what are we going to be talking about here?
Yeah, because I ain't get no prep sheet.
No prep sheet. This is and all of my guests know.
All good.
All of my guests know that there is no prep sheet. We just want to have a conversation, keep it open, talk about things. Obviously, people want to know, like, what is it that you do as the vice president over programming and operations at Radio 1? And then my questions are going to be, the whys and the hows of you doing what you do.
Sure.
Okay, so let's start up. Let's start from the beginning. Where are you from? What's your background?
My background is I'm from a small town outside of Pittsburgh. I almost never say the state, but I'll say it on your show. I've given it up a few times. But I'm from West Virginia, Wheeling, West Virginia, which is a little tiny town. But Wheeling is literally 45 minutes to downtown Pittsburgh. So I just tell people I'm from outside of Pittsburgh. So I'm a Pittsburgh Steeler fan. I love the Pittsburgh Penguins. I just love the whole Pittsburgh lifestyle.
So why don't you ever say West Virginia?
Because I got to hear jokes. I mean, if I say I'm from West Virginia, they'd be like, yo, did you ever kiss your cousin? Did y'all wear shoes? Did y'all have a real school?
Right. Because it's just a small town. So how to be in such a huge market like Atlanta, to have gone to Texas and Ohio and all the other places that you worked in radio, how did it feel to get to these like bigger markets? Did you just always dream big? Like, what was it as a kid?
I've never had the mentality that I was going to be one of those who was born in a small town and stayed in a small town. It's not even in me at all. Some of my family are still there. A lot of my family is still there. It's ironic, but I guess a lot of people have family members who never leave their hometown. I got put out of the house when I was 16 years old.
Wow.
And never went back.
Yeah.
And so my history, and we'll probably cover some of that if you want to, is I don't want to say checkered, but I don't want to say that I grew up with a troubled lifestyle, but I am a person who only saw their dad 4 times in their life. The 4th time the person was in a casket. Oh, wow. I grew up in the projects. Even though Wheeling is small, we had the projects, and they put all us blacks in East Wheeling, and that's where we resided for the most part, and it was 32 buildings strong. And we had the same stuff that goes on in small town projects that go on in big inner city projects. We just happen to be in a small town.
Gotcha.
So I kind of, to a certain degree, I don't want to say I have a project mentality, but I have a hustler's mentality. And for the most part, most of my life, even if I had a lot of money, I would hold on to it. I didn't have to wear the designer shoes and the designer pants and all of that stuff. It's just not really in me. I wasn't woven that way. But as I've gotten older, I don't want to say unfortunately, some could say fortunately, people got in my ear and said, hey, you ain't in a small town.
Right.
So you need to wear some certain kind of shoes. You need to wear a certain kind of shirt. And it's taken me to be a full-grown adult to kind of like really, really realize that.
To value that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing wrong with buying yourself something nice here and there. And really, you worked hard for where you are. So
yeah, I've been blessed.
You have been blessed. So you got yourself into radio. I know the story, but you got to tell the people the story that don't know. And a lot of this stuff is on the internet. So kind of want to just get through the internet stuff and get to the stuff that you don't tell nobody.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
But
no
I do have to ask, so you got kicked out at 16.
Yeah.
How did you continue to have some sort of motivation to do something?
Yeah.
And especially to get into the entertainment business, which you may not have even seen, coming up.
Yeah, I actually started in radio when I was in high school.
Okay.
And my mom putting me out, by the way, was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Why is that?
Well, one, it taught me about respect. It taught me that even though I was a young man, that there are certain rules to the game that you got to abide by. And I was doing things in my mom's house and in her presence that I had no business doing. And I wasn't a disrespectful kid, but I was a kid. And when you're a kid, you do certain things. And my mom was like not having it. And I'll never forget. She was older, so she tried to I don't want to say beat me because that sounds funny, but she would try to chastise me. And she would punch me, and sometimes when she would punch me, she would hurt her own hand. I was like, I'm not Superman, but why? Stop! What are you doing? Stop doing that! And but she ultimately had the final word when I went to work one day, and I got a call at the job. I used to work at Arthur Treacher's Fish and Chips, and I got a call from my niece Lisa and said, "Hey, what do you want me to do with your clothes?" And I was like, "What? What do you mean?" She said, "What do you want me to do with your clothes?" And I said, What are you talking about?" She said, "Your clothes, you dumbass. Your mom put you out, and your clothes is in the garbage bag at the front door, and she changed the locks on the door. What do you want me to do with your clothes?"
Yikes.
And I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, why don't you just say that at the beginning instead of saying what you want me to do with your clothes?" And I said, "Can you put them in your mom's house, and I'll figure it out." But she put me out, and I respected her for it. And I never tried to move back in. I stayed with my sister for a while. And she was a little bit younger than my mom. And if she put them hands on you, you kind of felt it. So I challenged her, I think, the first week, and we were going to get into a fist fight. And I went back upstairs because I was like, "Yo, I'm out. I'm going out and hang out with the fellas." No, not tonight. I said, "No, quit playing. Move out the way." And I said, "I'm going outside and hang with the fellas." She said, "No, not tonight." And then she stood in the doorway, and we was about to knuckle up. And I'm like, damn, I done got put out of the house. My sister ready to fight. Now, nobody's heard this story before. And I stayed in the attic, and it was hot. It had no air conditioning. And I just turned around and said, "You know what?" I said some things under my breath, and I took my ass back up to that hot-ass attic and sat down and thought about my life. And so, thank God for my sister and thank God for my mom.
Right, for sure.
But I got into radio in high school. Because we had several major high schools consolidate. And, if you were a rival at this school and we were at this school and we used to go to the games and we would fight at the games, and it was adolescent, stupid stuff. Well, when you put those four schools together to make a big campus, we had a radio station, we had a TV station, we had a hospital wing, we had a kitchen area with. It was
all types of
the most amazing high school. We immediately became champions in 4A sports because we had the best.
Right.
And but during that first year, there was a lot of racial tension. And then the second year is when I came on board, and that still kind of continued on. And I was having problems in study hall. We used to do little pranks on people, and it wasn't cool. And they came to me and said, "You can't be in study hall. You need to take another course." And I said, "Okay." And they showed me the electives, and I saw radio, television. And that, as you probably have heard me say before, I literally thought I was going to be watching television and listening to the radio and taking a test. Because I don't want to say my dumb ass, but I had no idea that the school was that massive and had a radio station and a television station in it.
Right.
And I found out you could get paid just for talking. I could do that.
I could do that.
I could do that all day.
Yeah.
So that's how I got into the radio business.
So let's talk about your current position. You're the vice president. You were named vice president of programming and operations at Radio One.
Yep.
About 2 years ago.
Yes.
And let's talk about your responsibilities. What sorts of responsibilities do you have today?
Yeah, I like to say that for the most part in Atlanta, I'm going to be held accountable for everything that you hear coming out of the speakers. What the jocks are saying, what music is being played, what promotions are getting put on the air. I'm not in sales, but if there's a commercial on the air and it has music that sounds country and Western, then I can pick up the phone and say, "Hey, do you got a hip-hop version of this?
Right,
because
something
this
urban.
doesn't fit the brand." So I do a lot of stuff, but the thing that I take the most pride in is mentoring and coaching the next developed stars that we have. So I do that a lot, but I'll also oversee Richmond, the programming strategies for Richmond, Raleigh, Charlotte, in Atlanta, of course. And I also deal with the syndicated programs based out of Atlanta for Reach Media, which include the Ricky Smiley Show and A couple of other inspirational programs as well, Willie Moore Jr. and Darlene McCoy.
Yes, great programs.
Yes, they are awesome. The cool part is I got a lot of great talent all the way around me, and that makes my job easier. And a lot of times, I tell people the person that might be getting accolades at the top, it's because they're the ones that might be peaking up, but there's a whole network of people that are doing their thing to make sure that that person does a good job, or else they don't get an opportunity to shine. So I don't really take a lot of the credit myself personally. I've been blessed to work with great people and let them grow and expand, and then that's how I continue to grow as well.
Well, it seems like you have some sort of eye for talent.
Yes.
I mean,
I spotted you.
That's what I was supposed to say. I mean, like you were looking for me, be it an artist that that you just know is going to be next up, or like you make it a point to include the independent artist or the independent artist before they break.
Oh yeah.
Within the brand Hot 1079, or just your talent on air. How do you know when someone has it? We talk about this it factor. How do you know when they have it? What are you looking for?
Well, years ago, it used to be harder. Before social media, you would just kind of almost have to take a chance. But if something happens that hasn't, like even years ago, this would still apply. If I go to a club and there's a record that somebody plays and it changes the atmosphere in the club, I got to know who that is. And so I've been able to pick hit records primarily because I can feel the vibe and the energy. In Atlanta, it's very, very competitive. We have more urban radio stations competing for African Americans in Atlanta than any other city literally on the planet in the world.
What do you think is so special about Atlanta? Why Atlanta? Why this market?
I think that the market, one, we have a lot of affluent African Americans. Our power base here is very, very strong. The forefathers of hip hop, the Outkast and the Dungeon Families, those guys made the groundwork for later on the T.I.s and now the Young Thugs and the Little Babies. We have such a great, rich history here in Atlanta that everybody notices us. And so everybody wants to come to Atlanta. It's funny, artists might be popping a little bit in their home city, but can't wait to get to Atlanta and act like they're woven into the fabric of Atlanta. Most people that I meet in Atlanta they're not even from Atlanta. I've been here 9 years, and I've only met, I probably could name maybe 10 people in 9 years. But when they do represent, they represent hard. Yo, I'm a Grady baby. You got to hear that. And so
I'm a Crawford Lawn baby myself.
Is that right? Okay, all right.
But so. I always ask that question, why Atlanta, because I feel like there is just something special bubbling, even beyond, people coming here and getting that sauce. But like, what is it about the culture? But you said it, the affluent, we have an affluent Black culture here. It's just a mix of a lot of different things. So I can agree with that.
I love Atlanta. So I passed up as an opportunity. I could have been a vice president more than likely several years ago, but the position required one to go to D.C., and it was a couple of people that they were looking at within the company to be that next VP.
Gotcha.
And I told them point blank, I don't want to leave Atlanta. And they said, so you don't want to be a VP? No, I do want to be a VP. But I have to be based in Atlanta.
Gotcha.
And they were like, okay, well, this position has to be based in D.C. And I said, okay, cool.
But then it came when it was supposed to.
Yeah, God, it came in God's timing, not ours.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about failure and success. We know that you have dealt with maybe more than one failure, from getting kicked out of your house to at 16 to being fired from a station.
4 times. Four different stations.
4 different stations. Wow,
Yes.
I didn't even realize it was 4 times. But talk about failure and success. What does that mean to you, and how does that look? Like, what is failure and what is success, and how did those work in your life?
Okay. Well, I always tell people in radio what people told me. There are only 2 types of people in radio. Have you heard this before?
No, let's hear it.
2 types of people in radio are those that have been fired and those that are going to be fired.
Facts.
It's just part of the game. And I kind of wore the badge pretty proud because it took 12 years before I got terminated. And my background, by the way, in radio started in top 40. It was 12 years before I got a job at a Black station. So I grew up playing, Boston and Foghat and Foreigner and Molly Hatchet and, all those what they call classic rock music right now.
Well, it's funny. I don't mean to interrupt, but it's funny because a lot of, especially like the veterans in radio that I know, from yourself to like a Greg Street, they started with the classic rock top 40. So that was that the only opportunities at the time?
That's it. Yeah, I mean, being from a small town, like I said, in Wheeling, even though we were influenced by Pittsburgh radio stations, and I grew up listening to a legendary station called Whammo, but I didn't have no transportation. I couldn't.
That's real.
You know, so I kept going to the 3 radio stations in my hometown that all were not trying to hire people who looked like me or sound like me. And it took 2 years after I graduated from high school before somebody let me in just to run tapes, you know? So, but that was enlightening for me as well. But the first time I got fired, you know, I've never been fired with cause. It's always been a change in direction or me being naive and stupid. I mean, I've made a lot of stupid mistakes, and I'm okay with saying that because I want other people to know that you're going to make stupid mistakes, and that happens, but it's how you rebound from it. And the first time I got let go was in Houston, and I had a great job making a lot of money, and I was the night guy, and I was there for quite a few years. But during that time, we had several program directors, several music directors, a couple of general managers. So I knew how to do the system. I knew how to schedule the music, and I thought that I knew how to program. And so when the opportunity became available for the position, when the position became available, I thought, hey, man, give me a shot.
Right.
You know, I've been here a long time. I understand. I know how to do it. And I had this is how naive and stupid I was. Houston was market number 7. You're not going to be a first-time PD in market number 7. But I didn't have the vision on. I didn't have those glasses of experience that I have now to see how utterly ridiculous that was.
Dream big, I feel like, shoot for the stars, you're going to land on something.
Yeah,
right?
Well, I landed out of a job.
Or shoot for the moon, you're going to land on something. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So what would you, when faced with adversity or faced with a challenge, what do you advise, or like how do you overcome those things? Because I'm sure aside from being fired, you face adversity every day. Be it ratings, be it, whatever the case may be. And I know it's a very competitive industry being in radio myself. But how do you overcome those things, especially with so much pressure? You're the vice president of like not only this market, but 3 other markets.
Yeah. Well, I do a lot of meditating. I love to go to Stone Mountain, and I sometimes I talk about it on my Instagram page at Hurricane Dave. But I do a lot of meditating, and I try to feed myself with positive affirmations and inspiration. And I'm very, very close to my spirit man and God. Now, I wasn't always that way, and I will tell you, this doesn't have to turn into the gospel channel.
It's okay.
But I'm so in touch with my inner spirit as a mature man that I just won't let things worry me. Early on, when the first time I got fired, I was stressed because I was like the king of the hill, and I hadn't experienced it before, and I hadn't experienced how many fake people there are in the business. There's a lot of people in the business that's just full of BS, and a lot of people in the business who will be your friend as long as you can help them. And I didn't realize that until the first time I got fired, when I was so-called Mr. Popular. Then I didn't have a job, and 90% of my friends fell off, like literally like 90%. And I was crushed by it. I cried by it. I ain't gonna even lie. I prayed to God about it, and I was going through a tough time during that period as well, because the day that I got fired, I was married. I got married to a person. And I really probably shouldn't have married them, but we were together for like 10 years. And they kept saying, well, let's just get married. Let's just get married. I'm like, well, let's not get married because everything is good. And after a while, though, you need to either make a commitment or move on.
Right.
And so we got married, and I said that let's not let this piece of paper change us. And it did. But I was also young and not committed to that life, just being totally honest.
Like
and I got fired on the same day that my divorce was final.
Wow.
And so that's the first time. It was a few days after that God actually really came into my life. And I remember crying on the floor because, when you don't know you're going to get fired and you got money coming in and you say, okay, well, we're going to get a divorce. It's uncontested. And I let her take literally everything out of the house. 1, because she deserved it. And 2, call it arrogance, call it stupidity on my part. I'm like, I'll be good, and you deserve this. And I wasn't right. We just weren't right for each other anymore. And I grew past our relationship. So she took everything out of the house except for the washer and dryer, because where she moved, it had a where they stack on top of each other, and we had big dryers, because I had a big house in Missouri City with an S-shaped swimming pool in the back. It was dope. Yeah,
you was living life.
I was living life.
That's where the really affluent Black
absolutely
live.
Yeah,
okay?
Absolutely, and that was back then.
Right.
Yeah,
I
and
can
so
imagine.
So yeah, she took everything out of the crib, and I was like, cool. I got some new furniture coming next week anyway. Blase. And I went to, and a lot of people don't know this story, so you're kind of getting a little bit of juice. But I went to the divorce court, and of course it was uncontested, so I basically had to show my face.
Right.
And they said, and I had earlier in the week I had been arguing with the general manager at the radio station about why I felt I needed to be the PD, and I ended up storming out of his office, and I'm thinking, what are you gonna do? Fire me? I really was on some BS. But I didn't know. I did not know I was showing my ass. I just thought, hey, but this is real, and I'm sharing this because it helped make me who I am today. Mm-hmm. I had to get the hard lesson. But I got divorced at 8 o'clock in the morning, 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning. It was sometime early. And then I went into work, and at 11 o'clock I was fired. Wow. On the same day.
Yeah.
And again, like I said, 90% of my friends left like, yo, you ain't got nothing for me. I ain't got nothing for you. And I couldn't understand why all those things were happening to me. But I also wasn't really living right either. And that's part of the karma that came back on that ass strong. And I went home, that big, beautiful house with no furniture in it, except for the washer and dryer, one of my computers, and all my clothes. Wow. So I slept on the floor on a little pallet, and was all alone. I was literally lost. And I'll never forget, I cried like a baby in a fetal position, because I was still fairly young. I don't know if I probably cry standing up now, but laying on the floor
at the time.
Yeah, I cried like a baby.
Wow.
And I asked God to forgive me and to help me, and I'll try to do right, and the whole nine. And I cried so hard until I was shivering. It was like a person that was on drugs. And literally, I felt the Spirit of God come in my body, and I stopped crying, and I felt a eerie, weird calmness come over me. Mm-hmm. And that's when I have the date written down in the book. That's the day that God literally stepped into my life.
That's beautiful.
And I never looked back. I got fired before, and I was like, God, why did this happen? And the subsequent times that I got fired was not because with cause. I wasn't being an idiot. Sometimes it just happens because he needs to position you to be in a different space.
Right.
And you sometimes, if the job is so good and so comfortable, you're not going to leave.
Right.
And so he will find a way to get you out of that position because he got something else for you over here. Mm-hmm. And you're never going to go there until you get fired. Mm-hmm. So I believe there's a silver lining literally in everything that happens to you.
I agree.
So I'm kind of a weirdo fanatic about that.
No, I think everybody has a coming to Jesus moment, mm-hmm. and that was yours. So,
oh, yeah.
And I think that's important. I think, also being rooted in your faith when you're in this business, because I don't know what you were dealing with specifically, but I know that, I've talked to several guests, and I personally have dealt with these things, but there's a lot that comes with this business.
Oh, yeah.
Including going out,
mm-hmm.
including drinking, mm-hmm. including partying, including mm-hmm. people that you may not necessarily be in an environment with mm-hmm. on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. So all of those things, if you let it, can consume you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And you got to stay grounded, because, right. I'm in a position of power right now, but I walk around the radio station, as I'm pretty sure you can attest to. I don't walk around that radio station like I own it. That's a job. My job is to make sure that we protect the revenue coming into the station, to groom the talent. But I learned a long time ago, and it wasn't after the first time that I got fired. It was probably after the second time or third time that I got fired. I don't own this. This is not mine.
It can be taken away.
It can be taken away. Mm-hmm. You're playing with somebody else's ball at any moment. And the last company that fired me, which really, I always preach about having a plan B. The last company that fired me, you know who that was? Mm-mm. Radio One.
Wow.
The company that I'm currently working for. Absolutely.
Wow.
And they fired me because they had a bad regime. and a person called them out of their name, which I didn't. But it happened, and I was like, I couldn't believe it. And then at that particular time, I went home and was like in disbelief. And I'll never forget my son looking me in the eye. He had beautiful brown eyes, kid, 13, 14 years old. And earlier in the week, we had went to a homeless shelter and was feeding people.
Mm-hmm.
And because I try to do that, I was on the board for Hosea Feed the Hungry here in Atlanta for a few years. But I believe in giving back.
Right.
And I'll never forget the look in his eye when he found out that I was unemployed. He looked at me and said, "Dad, how are we going to eat?" And when I think about that, I sometimes get emotional because it's burned into the back of my brain.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I will never, ever in life be in that position again.
Facts.
I can't.
Yeah.
And so that's why I have a drone business. I know how to fly drones. I just bought that company, as we talked about prior to taping, called Brand It Live.
Mm-hmm.
Please go to branditlive.com, where we deal with augmented reality. I know how to do graphics. I do all the graphics for Birthday Bash. I'm going to let somebody else do that. So I've learned how to diversify my talents, because you never know, because it's not mine.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is what I was going to also get to, which I'm happy you segued into that. You have found a way to adjust with the times time and time again. For those that don't know, you've been in the industry for 25 plus years.
30 plus.
30 plus. Wow.
40 plus. I'm okay with being an OG. I've been doing this for 40 years.
So for 40 years, you've been
crazy,
in this
right?
business. Yeah, that's amazing, I think. But you wouldn't know, or the average person wouldn't know, because you're dealing with artists who are probably from like 16 to like
24.
20, 24, 25.
Yeah.
That's the demo, especially with like Hot. You really continue to push the agenda for those people who are listening, right?
Absolutely.
So adjusting with the times, you have your ties into the tech business, stock, podcasting, video. Your Welcome to My Life podcast, which I didn't even know you could do video, like upload video on Apple Music. So like you always teach me something new. And it seems like you're just in front of technology.
Yes.
Why is that important for you to continue to grow with it instead of, and be on top of the trend instead of waiting until it happens?
Well, I like to say that whenever there's something new and emerging that could affect our audience, like we were one of the first stations in the country to get an Instagram account.
And Snapchat.
Yeah. Exactly. And because Glenn, yeah. So Glenn and I were competitive sometimes too on the technology side. But whatever there's something popping, whatever that trend is, and people are going to that, whether that be Instagram, whether that be Snapchat. If I'm really on point with my job, I'm running with that crew, and then I'm running even faster because I need to get there before everybody else gets there so I could plant my flag and be like, yo, yep, we're over here too.
Right.
So I've always been that way my whole life. I've always liked technology. I mean, my mom used to tell me that even as a kid, I used to take toys apart and then put them back together. And so I have this thing about to me, even though I'm an OG and I've been doing this, I feel like a kid every single day, because anything new, I just want to get involved in it, find out how it works, how can this better us from a company, and that keeps me young. My wife that I'm married to right now, she's a millennial. I got a wife that's a millennial, and my kids are millennials, which is so crazy. But I'm never gonna get old. I mean, I feel young. I feel like I'm 35 years old, or 25. I look like I'm more like 30 something instead of my actual age. But it's a blessing. It's living right. It's eating clean and doing the right thing and not drinking all the time and all that other stuff. You got to take care of your temple. Yeah.
Got to pace yourself.
Absolutely.
So you create the imaging you were creating the imaging for one of the biggest shows.
Birthday Bash.
Yes, Birthday Bash at Hot 107.9. And Birthday Bash is a Radio 1 staple. But how'd you learn, or like why were you like, I'm just going to do this and I'm going to, because this is like 3D imaging, a lot of things that you're doing. Adobe After Effects. Like, what's the process? How'd you learn, and why was it important for you to kind of get behind that first initially before teaching, because you go on to like teach other people and it's not like you're like, well, I did this all by myself.
Right.
You want to kind of create a lane for other people.
Absolutely.
Right.
Well, the birthday bash scenario with the graphics. Well, when I got here to Atlanta, birthday bash was already here. But obviously it's not back then. It's not what it is now.
Right.
And they used to literally have a chain link fence and put some speakers up on the stage. And I don't want to say all the black folks, but they would all go to the show and they would see up and coming talent. But it wasn't like, oh my God. And I got to give a lot of credit to Tip. Because Tip was the first person, and sometimes I joke with him and say, yo, that's your stage, right? So Tip wanted to come to Birthday Bash, but he didn't want to do the basic Birthday Bash. He wanted like lights and the whole nine.
He wanted a show.
He wanted a show.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, how much does that cost in production? And I'm not going to tell you the amount, but it was an amount that made everybody be like, damn.
How we going to do that?
How we going to do that? That's not what we do. And he said, I'll pay for half.
Wow.
And I was like, whoa, this cat is serious. And so I went to my general manager, Tim Davies, and I said, I know this is way off the spectrum of anything we've ever done in the history of Birthday Bash. But Tip said they'll do half.
That's great.
And he was like, really? And I said, yeah. And I said, so we at least got to meet him halfway, bro.
Yeah.
I can talk to my boss that way. He's the best boss I ever had. And so he agreed. And we had the most amazing show. And I said, to match the show, the graphics on the show have to be better.
Right.
We can't just be putting up a static logo and some janky, signs up on there with, banners. It needs to be digital. And so that's when I'm self-taught on everything I've done. And I learned how to do After Effects and graphics and all that. And we put that stuff up there and it just blew all of Atlanta away. And it took it to a whole nother level. And of course, the following year, we can't go back.
Right. You got to keep going.
We don't have Tip doing that other half. And he was like, oh, now you want me to pay for the whole thing? Yeah. Because you can't make something from a chain link fence and speakers on a stage to something incredible and the audience loves it, and then you go back.
Right.
We can't go back. And we've been stepping forward every time. So now it's like, we have meetings. I have a great team at Radio 1. And it's a group of people, and we talk about stuff. Okay, well, what's going to be the theme? And one year, when Tip versus Jeezy, I said, let's put a boxing ring in there to see who is the king of Atlanta when it comes to these hip hop artists. And of course, nobody actually got in it. I wanted them to come out on stage and go through and perform a little bit in the ring. They went right past the ring. It was like over everybody's head. But yeah, so we just got to be creative.
This year with the revolving door.
Yeah, the revolving door, because we was like, okay, we got so many acts. I said, I told the staging people I want to have a door on there. And they had a door from another artist, and I can't say who because they promised they would kill me if I ever told them. But we got that door, and it was a revolving door. So, it's fun. It's theme-based. It's not just like a concert. It's a lifestyle thing. And that puts a little pressure on. Yeah. Because, one of those years they're going to be like, oh, yeah, it wasn't good as last year.
Right.
So, but I love it.
So what sort of advice would you give to artists interested in some radio spins? Where should you be in your career even to think about approaching radio?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you need to make a story. In Atlanta, it's not our job to break records. Back in the day, we used to say, oh man, I'm first to play this. We need to make a movie out of it. To be honest with you, young people, they get that stuff way before we get it to the radio. Mm-hmm. Because with social media and all that stuff, if you're Kodak Black or whoever you may be, and you put some stuff up on your YouTube channel or your SoundCloud, by the time we get it at radio, because the label has to get it, they have to produce it, they have to clean it up. A lot of times people have already heard it. Mm-hmm. And of course, with an album comes out, the label still works the different singles. I had a funny story with my daughter, and we were talking about the Cardi B Ring record, and which is the current record. But when the album came out, young people, y'all listen to the whole album. Mm-hmm. So I was like, I was picking up from college, and I said, hey, what do you think of the Cardi B? And she was like, oh, she's got a new one? And I said, yeah. So what do you think? And of course, I get the albums too. And I said, yeah, the Ring record. She said, Ring? I haven't heard it. And then I was like, I played it on my thing, and she's, Oh, Dad, this is old. I heard this like 3 months ago. You said it was new. I thought it was like a new ring.
Yeah.
And I got the biggest laugh out of that. So
Yeah.
the artists, you know, Sammy, they need to go make their story in the streets, and we will notice them. We've heard a million times, I got the hottest thing in the club. I got
Right.
this, I got that. But I'd like to go to the club still. You know, I'm not that old uncle. I always say I'm not going to be confused with the old uncle who don't know when it's time to take your ass home and get some milk and cookies. That will never be me. But I will sit up in the back and I might drink me, you know, a Hennessy or, you know, or my whatever my drink of choice might be, and chill in the back of the club and not try to be up there dancing and doing all of that ignorant stuff. But you know, and I've been doing that my whole career, is go to the club and see what changes the atmosphere in the room. I don't care what the producer said. I don't care what the record label said. I need to feel that energy, that vibe. And
That's
and
what you call market research. I was going to ask you
Yeah.
about your market research.
Yeah, market research. That's a little code word for my then vice president of programming, because he would never want to be heard that we're going to the strip club.
Right.
So we would always do market research.
Right.
But I still do that to this day. You know, I mean, I got a beautiful, sexy wife. So, you know, and when you're my age, you have seen plenty of TNA and all that. My whole career. So I don't go to the strip club to see that. I can see that anywhere. But I do go because I want to hear. In Atlanta, that's where a lot of records are broken.
Oh, yeah.
Now, it's hard for an R&B artist, you know.
Well, I mean, you see, which I was going to ask you see artists like East Atlanta's Black, who has this unconventional R&B, which is, you know, R&B has changed a lot, to, you know, just any of these artists in Atlanta who are doing, you know, music that's outside of this specific genre, which I was going to ask you, why is radio still important in comparison to like the many streaming platforms and other ways that you can stream, listen to music, purchase music? You know what I mean? If I'm in my car, especially as a millennial, if I'm in my car, well, this doesn't apply to me because I work in radio, but for most of my friends, they're in the car, they're going to plug up their phone first.
Yep.
And then,
that aux cord.
Yeah. And then if their phone's dead, then maybe they'll turn on the radio.
Right.
So then not only am I, you know, do I have all these streaming platforms, but I also have multiple urban radio stations here. So why are they picking your stations, and why is radio still important to your market or to the market?
Let me answer the first question, why radio is still important. Terrestrial radio we're talking about. Terrestrial meaning like you tune it in on your car. I'm sure your audience probably knew that. But there was a study that actually just came out about 2 weeks ago that talked about the importance of your local radio station. And it really shed a lot of light. Like if you go to a store and you see thousands of songs, right? You don't really know where to kind of start. It's like there's so many choices. Your radio station is the person holding a menu saying, hey, this is what we got, but let me tell you what our highlights are. And when I thought about that, I was like, damn, you know, that's actually pretty real and pretty dope. We have access to the same hundreds of millions of songs as everybody else, but radio is very, very focused on playing hit records. So it's kind of like if I go to a restaurant and I say, man, you got a lot of things on this menu, and you look up and what do you ask the waiter or waitress?
What's your best? Yeah.
What do you recommend?
What do you recommend?
Right. So radio is recommending the best and the biggest that the whole world wide plethora of music has to offer.
Absolutely.
And when I thought about that, I was like, yeah, I can't remember who wrote it, but I was like, that is so on point.
Yeah, we recently just talked to Keenan. You know Keenan, of course.
Yeah, good guy.
About, you know, like why his job is still important, because he's basically saying that like I can take you from being that like independent artist who, you know, you have a certain reach, but then I take you to radio and you become like a global act.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's just expanding your reach.
Yep. So yeah. He kind of answered, you know, the second part of the question, why is radio still important? Because it will take you to the next level.
Exactly.
You know, I mean, radio still reaches, you know, there's rumors like when the satellite radio came on, terrestrial radio's dead. When the Pandoras and all these different music applications became available, radio's dead. Radio still reaches over 90-something%. I think 93% of all the population we ain't going nowhere. We're not dying. It's not a dying breed. Has it gone down some? Yes, because we have competitors. The most dangerous thing to radio stations, to me, this thing right here called a smartphone. Because anything that distracts somebody from listening to my brands, that's the real threat. I don't worry about those streaming services. I mean, they serve a purpose. They're great, But, if you want to know what's happening in your market and you want to have that focus narrowed down, you're going to need your local radio station.
Absolutely. So let me ask you, why do you love radio? Why do you love this business? Why do you love the things that you love? Like, what's the passion behind, from radio to technology to all these things that we're talking about?
For me, it's keeping me young. Like I never want to retire. Even if I had $10 million, I would buy me a radio station just so I could tinker with it. I'd buy a little translator or something like that. The technology, it's changing so much. I mean, my era grew up, where you had to splice tape and put it together. Probably some studio people probably know what that is. A lot of young people, they have no idea what that means. I mean, everything is digital.
Right.
And so to me, to go as an example, I got to find a picture. I've been in the studios for a long time. I've had studios in just about every house that I've had ever since I was a kid. There's one picture of a studio when I was in Pittsburgh that was maybe half the size of this room, and it had all the equipment, the big tape machines and all of that, and that is replaced by this phone. This smartphone can do all that stuff, and to me, that's fascinating. I mean, I'm like, even when I talk about it, I get excited about it, because I'm like excited, like, what's next? Feed me what's next. So that keeps me young and keeps me vibrant and keeps me healthy and all that. And the other thing about working at a radio station, every day is different.
Right. No one day is like.
Yeah, exactly. And now with that also, there's also some bad elements. You got to deal with egos and people who were probably me 30 years ago who didn't realize you can be replaced. So just managing that, and sometimes hearing people try to be slick, I used to do nights, so I used to do all the little slick stuff at night. And so when people try to do slick stuff, I like laugh and be like, I did that 20 years ago. Yeah. You weren't in the studio, bro. And I could look on the camera, but just tell me, nah, you right, I wasn't in there.
Getting caught up.
All that, yeah. So to me, that's fun. That's fun. I enjoy that.
So Kane's Rules of Success.
Yes.
You really let people, contrary to a lot of other program directors, I should say that, start there. You really let people into your life in order to, what it seems like, which is what we do on this podcast, to educate people.
Yes.
Be it like inspiration or actual like help with a specific, would it be a tech or whatever it is. Kane's Rules of Success kind of spurred or spawned from that. I think a friend of yours kind of encouraged you to do it. I can't remember who, but tell us what that is and why that was important for you to start kind of like a branch of your brand, Kane's Rules of Success. And you even did a panel recently. We were both at Arlinda Garrett's Music Business Empowerment Conference, and you had a themed panel around this with some other program directors. So tell us about that.
Well, the name Kane's Rules for Success, I believe, came from my buddy Malcolm X Ennis, who was on stage.
Yes.
And he calls me his sensei from time to time, and I was just dropping some knowledge of some experiences that I had gone through, and he was like, "Yeah, man, that's dope, man. Kane's Rules, And I was like, "Yeah, Kane's Rules, we just talking, we having a good time. We probably was someplace drinking and having fun, not getting drunk, but drinking and socializing." And I don't know how the Kane's Rules for Success part of it came together. If he said that all together, if he said Kane's Rules, I'm pretty sure he said Kane's Rules. And then I came back with Kane's Rules for Success. Yeah. But at the time, I didn't think anything about it. Now, some 710 tweets and posts about it later, it has developed into something. And but a lot of those things, Sammy, literally come off the top of the dome. It's not like I plot and I think and because I might go a week without doing one. Or I might do 3 days in a row. But it's literally something emotionally happens within me, and I'll have to like get it out of my system, almost like I just got to get it out. And sometimes when I do that, I might leave a word off, or I might not put a R on your or something. Because it's just like let me just put this out real quick.
Yeah.
And so it really started growing legs. And when I did that panel, which was suggested by some of the folks that were there, by Juliet Jones and Arlinda, to call it King's Rules for Success. As I mentioned at the panel, I didn't want to call it that because I thought that was too self-serving. Yes, I have an ego. Yes, I do. But not that big of an ego where I wanted to have a panel named after one of my hashtags. But they convinced me to do it, and I'm glad they did.
Yeah.
And people were telling me I should put it in a book. This guy named AJ Joyner, who is a brand builder, he said, I'm going to take, you got 700 of them up, I'm going to take 50 of them or 100, and we're going to create a book.
Yeah.
And because he's been trying to get me to do a book for a long time. So I gave him permission to scour them and find the best ones. And he's going to turn it into a book.
That's
and
dope.
So I'll be an author, and
Yes.
I'm thrilled about that. And the other day I posted something, I don't know if you saw it, a gentleman by Joe _ CUV.
Yeah. He put together the
A
video.
I get up every morning at like at 5:30,
Lori's
6 o'clock.
cousin.
Yeah, Lori's cousin.
Yeah,
yeah,
I did my digging. I did my digging. I saw.
Well, when he DM'd me, and it said top 10 King's Rules for Success, and a lot of times on my DMs I get nothing but record people trying to get their record played,
Right.
or how do I get it on, and I try to respond to as many of them as I can, but I can't to all of them. But when he said he did a video, and I clicked on the link, and I was blown away by it. It was weird. When I looked at it, I almost felt like, when somebody dies, they do like a documentary. I almost felt like this is the afterlife.
Oh God.
Like, man, this is, he studied it.
Yeah.
And it
That's what's up though.
it was really profound. And
That's what's
I
up.
give God all the credit, because
Definitely.
that was not my intention, but now I'm being steered in that direction. So it's a blessing.
That's what's up. Congrats to that for sure.
Thank you,
and
Ma. I appreciate it.
It's what's up. And speaking of being honored, you've been honored several times, or a few times, I should say, especially most recently, like I said, with Arlinda Garrett's Music Business Conference last month, to your upcoming Living Legend Award. You wonder how I know that. How does it feel to be recognized for your talent and the work you've done, the work you've put in? Does it feel rewarding? Because a lot of times I talk to producers or whoever that may have been nominated for a Grammy, but they hadn't quite won one yet. Or sometimes we talk about credits a lot of times with like engineers. I'm sure Luke will understand, like engineers not getting the necessary credit, but they do put the song
Great
together.
work. Yeah,
you know,
they do all the work.
Right. And then you being in the industry for 40 years, you know what I mean? Like, getting now like the Icon Award, your Living Legend Award you're getting soon, like how does that make you feel? Do you feel awarded? Do you feel it's necessary to have that?
I don't think it's necessary, because the greatest award that I could ever give is to see somebody that I work with be successful.
True.
That's far more important to me than any kind of acknowledgement. I am honored. That's a big one.
Yeah.
They've been doing that for 22 years. And I'm not going to front and be like, yo, I didn't wonder when am I going to ever get one. I've groomed a lot of people that have gone on to be successful. But everything, it's in God's timing, but am I excited about it? I got the suit that I paid. I had a custom made suit that I paid several $1,000s for. And I've never wore it. That'd be the very first time that I'm wearing. And the only reason why I got that suit is because somebody, like I said, I don't care about brands and all that stuff. I'm okay with a t-shirt on and just some jeans, a la Steve Jobs, a la some of the greatest pastors in the world.
Right.
But I'm gonna break that suit out that night.
I bet.
And, I'm flying my whole family out. Those that can come, because it's
That's dope.
Yeah, I'm thankful. Thank you to the Living Legends Foundation. That's a big one. I'm touched by that. Thank you so
That's
much.
awesome.
I appreciate it.
So
Sammy.
you have had the opportunity to interview me, and I'm gonna let you go soon. I know you gotta get back to work.
It's all good.
I know you have.
I've been wanting to get on here for a minute. I be seeing the little episodes, and I know be watching.
We see you. So we had to bring you on.
I appreciate that.
You've had the opportunity though to meet, interview, hang out with some of the biggest forces in this industry. I think it's super cool. I saw a video on your YouTube actually when music industry icon L.A. Reid stops by.
Oh yeah.
And it was just so when
Chill.
music icon stop. I'm like, what? No,
Right,
it's L.A.
right.
Reid in your office. Like,
Yes.
that's kind of dope. Do you ever get starstruck, or like is that just a part of the job for you?
I think it's part of the job now. I think once I realized that at the end of the day, they put their pants on the same way I do, and they just happen to be more famous or more talented, or they've carved out their niche. I will tell you, it's always exciting to see like Janet Jackson Oh my
Yeah,
God,
she
she
just
was just at
recently.
the station. I haven't even posted that picture yet. Now that I think about it, but
Yeah,
yeah,
I
she was
missed
at the
her.
station. She was awesome.
Yeah.
The biggest thrill I probably got was getting into an argument with Prince
What?
backstage at a concert in Cincinnati, Ohio. His show started 30 minutes late because we were arguing backstage, and
About what?
well, he used to we had a radio station that the company that I worked for had a station in Minneapolis, and it was the first FM urban station in Minneapolis because there's just not a lot of us up there.
Right.
But Prince wanted to be the music director for the brand, and so when we put it on, excuse me, when we put it on, he was the music director. Just kind of like play. Like, dude, you're Prince. You're not really the music director.
Right.
But we played a lot of Prince records, and he put all his plaques up on the wall, and it was amazing, and it was a big deal for Minneapolis.
Right.
And he would come into the station, you know,
Really?
and he would help pick the records, and it was a lot of local artists because he was big on local. Well, at some point, then it's not really a toy.
Right.
This is a real radio station.
Right.
We got to make money, and so we started taking a lot of the local stuff off and like becoming a real radio station playing hit records, and he didn't like that. And I think that maybe like we all get, Prince, you don't own this radio station. This is a company. And it was owned by Blue Chip Broadcasting, which Radio One eventually purchased. And so he took all his plaques off the wall, stormed out, and it was very ugly.
Yikes.
And of course, then he became enemy of the state, so to speak. And shortly after that, he did a show in our hometown, where the company's hometown is Cincinnati. That's where we were headquartered. And we had a meet and greet, and it was in an area room about this size, and it was backstage. And of course, I wanted to go. I didn't really realize that he was really, really upset. And so I went to the meet and greet, with the rest of the people and people from other stations and all of that stuff. And then he said, is there anybody here who works for Blue Chip Broadcasting? And I'm like, and he said, oh, okay, what do you do there? And I said, I'm the program director. Oh, and he got me so good. Oh, so you're the one who decides what we get to play on the radio? Yeah. And he was in a chair that had wheels, and he had me sit in the chair. He slid over to me and got in my face, and he said, let me ask you a question. And I said, okay. Now, granted, he didn't have no hot records at that time. And I always addressed him, what did I say to him before I addressed him? Not in all honesty. Oh, with all due respect, because this is Prince. So even though we were debating and arguing, I always said, with all due respect, because I respected him.
Right.
And I still respect him, even though he's gone. But he said, so let me ask you a question. Did you ever write any music? I'm like, no. He said, did you ever play an instrument? And I said, well, I played rhythm and lead guitar in a band one time. Oh, did you guys ever put any records out? No. So never put a record out. Don't write music. Do you play multiple instruments? No. Don't play multiple instruments. Do you know how to read music? No, don't know how to read music. Then you're the perfect person who should be deciding on what we get to listen to. And the room was like, oh,
Yikes.
I was like, damn, he really set me up. Why he set
it all
me
the way
up?
up.
Why
He set it all the way
Prince,
up.
why'd you do that?
Yikes.
Yeah, so, and then of course I had
You had a few words to say, of course.
Of course. I talked about his current music not being popular with the audience. And I said, with all due respect, you'll see that when you perform tonight, when you perform those new songs, the audience is just going to stand there and they're not going to respond. But when you play your classics, they're going to go crazy. Watch that happen. And the audience was like, ooh, no, you didn't. So that was one of the most amazing nights of my life. And we went back and forth, but he got me. He called me the Matrix. It got really, really deep. And but I'll never forget that. And that was like out of famous moments, this is Prince we're talking about.
Right, that you're having a whole ass argument with.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Well, that kind of leads me to my next question. What does respect mean to you? Because obviously in this business, you don't back down because it's a competitive space. So you have to be kind of like humble but have an ego to an extent. But also you are dealing with a lot of different artists and people who have these egos. So and who you may even have that initial respect for.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a level of respect. What does respect mean to you? I even heard you saying something about respecting your mom and your sister early on. So it kind of just full circles. What have you learned about respect?
Well, I think you got to treat everybody with respect. Most importantly, the people that you work with. And people ask me, what's your secret? Why have you been successful? I've programmed, and this is going to sound like I'm bragging, but I'm proud of it. I've programmed more #1 radio stations across the country than anybody that I know that's currently programming. And in various different formats, from rock to top 40 to soft AC, like I guess that would be a station kind of like Star 94.5 here, white soccer moms, you know.
Yes.
Yeah. So a lot of that has to do with treating people with respect. Meaning that if I treat you with respect, Sammy, and I ask you to do something, I'm not going to ask you to do something, one, that I either wouldn't do myself or haven't already done. So if I treat you with respect and you treat me with respect, we should win. There should be no way we can't win. So I'm really big on respect. But at the same time, I will not allow somebody to disrespect me and or disrespect my staff. When I first got to Atlanta, there was, and I won't mention the name, but if people think about it, they probably could figure it out, where one of my talents was being disrespected by a very prominent hip-hop artist. He threatened this person in Vibe magazine. I still have the article. And a couple of people on my staff, one other person got beat up by his goons. And we had to have a coming to Jesus meeting.
Right.
And I pulled all his records off the air.
Wow.
And he came to the radio station. He was hot. And I said, well, listen, you cannot be threatening people on my staff.
Right, period.
Yeah, and we ended up getting it worked out, and now they're good friends again. But it's an Atlanta, two Atlanta icons, legends, and but I'm big on respect, you know. And I've had little run-ins with, you know, various artists. I remember 2 Chainz posted something, and I thought it was disrespectful, and I went at him, and and we went back at it. These guys here in Atlanta, they know that's not the one. I mean, I like to have fun. I'm spiritual. And sometimes that can be a problem because when they see me talk about God or they see me being spiritual, sometimes people take that as being soft. And I've had that happen in the building that I work for. And then they got to see that, okay, I'm a spiritual person. I love God, but I can also be an asshole.
Be like that.
Ouch.
Yikes.
Sorry, guys.
So let me ask you the last thing. What have you learned that remains the same? And this doesn't have to be about your profession. It could be just what is something that over the years in your life that you've learned that has remained the same, and what's one thing that you've had to adapt to as things begin to change?
The one thing that remains the same is that God loves me. I mean, He loves my dirty draws, and I know I can't, right? And I say that because I've made some mistakes along the way, and every time He pulled me out of the fire. But I also learned that whenever I get away from Him, bad things happen. You know, things happen to me that shouldn't happen to me. But if I remember to put Him first in everything that I do, first Him, then my family, then my job, then my friends, in that order. And you can never shuffle that deck with me anyway, because that's a formula for success. So that's been pretty consistent for me. Uncertainty about the business. On the flip side, you never know what's going to happen tomorrow. But that's also very exciting to me, is that, you know, at any given moment, it's almost like how football teams used to be, or basketball teams used to be before they piled up on the superstars. Whoever had a good day that day, they could win. Right. You know, and so the uncertainty of the business, you know, is always kind of edgy, but that keeps it fun. When I get off on the 12th floor at 101 Marietta Street and the doors open up, I don't know what I'm going to experience. But I do know I'm going to be ready for it. Yeah. You know? That's dope. So.
All right. Well, balancing family seems to be something that you've been able to do, be it inviting your wife or your family to some of the events, or you just taking a moment in the morning to spend with your child on Saturday, your baby girl.
Yep. Baby love.
Yeah. So how do you do this? Like, I saw you had your wife and your youngest daughter at the conference recently, and I see them often. How do you manage to kind of keep a balance? Because I know the radio station keeps you there for a while.
Yeah. That's my balance. That's my my real life gut check. You know, my wife, I don't want to say she doesn't care about the business, but she don't care about Hurricane Dave at all. You know, and it's, you know, sometimes, you know, if I feel like I'm getting too big, she'll pop the bubble.
Like you ain't listen.
Yeah, exactly. You know, focus. You know, bring it down a notch. And sometimes I'd be like, yo, you just hating. Why you hating? You know, but yeah, that's important. At the end of the day, you can have a lot of money, you can have a lot of fame, you can have a lot of success, but if you don't have nobody to share that with, and they get an opportunity to partake in it, then what's it for? You know, because after you've eaten a lot of success, I don't want to say it all tastes the same, but you know, give somebody else some of that. You know, let your family enjoy it. You know, there was a person who I had an opportunity to be placed in Who's Who Black in Atlanta, and they said, hey, you want to be in there again? But I've been in there like several times, and I told Lori, I said, no, I don't want to be in it again. She said, you sure? I said, no, put this person in it. You know, which is one of our up and coming executives, and I won't say who. And she was like, man, that's dope. You know, that's pretty cool. And I said, yeah. First of all, this person deserves it because they're working very hard. And me being in Who's Who in Black Atlanta, it don't mean that much to me. It's nice, I appreciate it, but it'll mean a hell of a lot more to this person.
Right.
And just to see the person enjoy it, and that the person knows how they got in there, but just to see that person enjoy it and know that they earned it and they deserved it, those are the kind of joys for me. You know, and those are the things that balance things out, because, you know, we didn't talk about a lot of negative stuff, but there's a lot of negative energy sometimes in my life and in my world, and people that are around me that are envious, that are jealous, that aren't happy in their career. So they come for you and they attack you, and a lot of them get surprised when I you know, hold up, or if they swing at me, I might swing right back. You know, because I'm not gonna lie down. I'm not that much of a nice guy, and I'm not that much of a spiritual guy that I'm gonna let you walk on me and attack me and not fight back.
I feel you.
Yeah, because it happens, man.
I'm sure it does.
Yeah,
it continues to happen as you elevate.
But let me tell you, I'm excited to see you. I really am, because and you know, this is not like time to kiss up because we're about to wrap up. But you already know how I feel about you. I think you're a superstar talent. I've always thought that. You know, I watch the podcast and say, look at Sammy, you know.
Yeah, well, actually, I must say he did check me when I first told him about the podcast, or when he first discovered the podcast. He was like, you sound so dry on there. Like, you just are tired and just, I was like, I know, but it's just like, it's, you know, understanding and learning and watching yourself and growing through that. So thank you for that, for checking me, because I definitely, you know, try to be more engaging. A lot of times it's more so I just want the guest to talk, so because I can talk forever, obviously. So that's why I was so reserved, but it did help me, and I think you'll see in the last few interviews.
Oh yeah, I've seen you grow, and I think at the radio station you have an opportunity to grow. And you know, I unfortunately, because of the promotions that I've gotten, I don't get an opportunity to work with you as close as I would like to. But I know that you're working with different people that work for me. But I you know, I think you're a superstar. I think you're talented. You're obviously gifted and beautiful. But it's more than just surface. It's how you move. You know, your brand is a brand in Atlanta. And I'm like, okay, yeah, no, she needs to be on over here. And it took me a while, because obviously you're over at V103, and I respect Reggie and the team over there. But I think your youthfulness, and your attitude, and you're a millennial, you need to be over here where the millennials are doing things.
I feel you.
Yeah.
I completely agree, and I thank you for having me, you know what I mean, finally getting me over there, and I appreciate, you know, you grooming me and helping me with other opportunities. So thank you so much. Thank you. Speaking of branding, they have to know where to follow you, where to find you on social media, so tell them where it's at.
You can find me pretty much everywhere at Hurricane Dave, on Instagram, on Snapchat, on Twitter. And please check out Brand It Live. Although I think I'm going to get Branded ED, because when you say Branded Live, people put Branded ED, but it's actually branditlive.com. And if you think of some new ways that we can use augmented reality, let me know, and I'll cut you in on it.
I'll be talking to you soon then, you know. Let me get that check.
I'll cut you in on it.
But yeah, thank you again so much. And
thank you, Ma.
Yeah,
Appreciate
no problem. As always, you guys can follow this podcast at IDM Podcast on all social media platforms, Instagram specifically, and Twitter, as well as myself at Sammy Approved everywhere. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Peace.
Appreciate you.
Sonically superior.